Hi there. Before we begin, I want to thank you for being here, for taking a moment for yourself. Today's story is deeply personal. It's about pressure, perfection, and what happens when we forget how to breathe. This is the journey of one woman who spent years chasing approval until her body said, enough. A story of burnout, awakening, and reclaiming life one breath at a time. The day I stopped impressing and started breathing. My health story. Let's begin. The fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria hummed, a sterile counterpoint to the frantic symphony playing out in my mind. I clutched the lukewarm coffee, the paper cup crinkling under the pressure of my trembling hands. Across from me, Dr. Anya Sharma, her face etched with a weary compassion I knew all too well, pushed a small stack of papers across the table. "These are your latest test results, Clara," she said, her voice soft but firm. "The inflammatory markers are elevated. Again. Your blood pressure is consistently high and, well, you know the rest." I did know the rest. The insomnia that stretched into weeks, the crippling anxiety that coiled in my stomach, the relentless fatigue that made even the simplest tasks feel like climbing Everest. My body, once a finely tuned machine driven by ambition and a relentless pursuit of perfection, was now a battleground, ravaged by the invisible forces of chronic stress and a complete disregard for my own well-being. My life, as I had meticulously crafted it, was a masterpiece of external validation. A high-powered career in corporate law, a sleek downtown condo overlooking the city, a carefully curated social media presence showcasing a life of effortless success. It was all a shimmering facade, built on a foundation of self-denial and a desperate need to impress. I had chased promotions, accolades, and the approval of others with the ferocity of a marathon runner, pushing myself to the brink of exhaustion, ignoring the whispers of my body screaming for rest. "Clara, we've talked about this," Dr. Sharma continued, her gaze unwavering. "The medication is helping, but it's not a magic bullet. You need to make significant lifestyle changes. This isn't sustainable. You're running on fumes, and your body is starting to break down." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth. I knew she was right, of course. I had known it for months, maybe even years. But the thought of slowing down, of relinquishing control, of admitting that I couldn't do it all was terrifying. It felt like admitting defeat. "I know, Anya," I mumbled, avoiding her eyes. "I'm trying. It's just hard. My career, my responsibilities." Anya sighed, a sound filled with a mixture of frustration and understanding. "Clara, your career won't matter if you're not around to enjoy it. Your responsibilities will eventually become someone else's. But your health, that's yours to protect. You're not invincible." That night, lying awake in the darkness, Anya's words echoed in my mind. I stared at the cityscape twinkling outside my window, the lights blurring through the tears that streamed down my face. It was a beautiful view, a testament to my supposed success, but all I felt was emptiness. The city, once a symbol of opportunity and ambition, now felt like a cage, trapping me in a relentless cycle of striving and achieving, with no room for joy, for rest, for simply being. I scrolled through my social media feed, a curated highlight reel of perfect vacations, flawless outfits, and glowing achievements. Each post felt like a tiny stab wound, a reminder of the charade I had been perpetuating, not only to the world but also to myself. I was living a life designed to impress, not to breathe. The realization hit me with the force of a tidal wave. I had been so focused on climbing the ladder, on proving my worth, on seeking external validation, that I had completely lost touch with myself. I didn't know what I enjoyed anymore, what made me happy, what truly mattered. I had sacrificed my health, my happiness, and my inner peace at the altar of ambition. That night, something shifted within me. A flicker of defiance, a spark of hope, a quiet rebellion against the suffocating expectations I had placed upon myself. I decided in that moment that I was done. Done with the relentless striving, done with the constant comparison, done with living a life that wasn't my own. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. The anxiety was still there, a familiar weight in my chest, but it was different somehow. It was no longer a paralyzing fear, but a dull ache, a reminder of the work I needed to do. I started small. I canceled my gym membership, the one I used to post sweaty selfies and track my calorie burn, and instead went for a walk in the park. I left my phone at home, resisting the urge to document my experience, to prove to the world that I was living a healthy life. I simply walked, breathed, and listened to the sounds of nature. The rustling leaves, the chirping birds, the gentle breeze against my skin. It was a symphony of peace that I had been deaf to for far too long. I started saying no. No to late-night meetings, no to weekend work events, no to commitments that drained my energy and left me feeling depleted. It was surprisingly difficult at first. I felt guilty, selfish, like I was letting people down. But with each no, I felt a little bit stronger, a little bit more in control of my own life. I started reconnecting with things I had long forgotten I enjoyed. I picked up my old guitar, the one that had been gathering dust in the corner of my apartment, and started strumming chords, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. I rediscovered my love of reading, devouring books that nourished my soul instead of fueling my ambition. I started spending time with people who made me feel good, who loved me for who I was, not for what I did. The biggest change, however, was at work. I realized that my relentless pursuit of perfection was not only detrimental to my health, but also to my performance. I was so focused on impressing my superiors that I had lost sight of the bigger picture. I was micromanaging my team, obsessing over details, and creating a toxic environment of stress and anxiety. I decided to try a different approach. I started delegating more tasks, trusting my team to do their jobs. I stopped working late nights and started prioritizing my own well-being. I started speaking up in meetings not to impress, but to share my ideas and contribute to the conversation. To my surprise, my performance actually improved. I was more focused, more creative, and more effective when I wasn't constantly teetering on the edge of burnout. The journey wasn't easy. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and days when I felt like giving up. The anxiety didn't disappear overnight. The insomnia still haunted me from time to time. But I persevered, one small step at a time, guided by the unwavering belief that I deserved to be healthy, happy, and at peace. I started practicing mindfulness, learning to observe my thoughts and feelings without judgment. I meditated, even if it was just for 5 minutes a day, focusing on my breath and letting go of the endless stream of worries that plagued my mind. I started journaling, writing down my thoughts and feelings, processing my emotions, and celebrating my small victories. I started seeing a therapist, a wise and compassionate woman who helped me unravel the tangled web of my past and understand the root causes of my need for external validation. She helped me see that my worth was not dependent on my achievements, my appearance, or the approval of others. I was worthy simply because I existed. Slowly, gradually, imperceptibly, my life began to transform. The anxiety lessened, the insomnia subsided, the fatigue lifted. My body began to heal, to repair the damage I had inflicted upon it. I started to feel alive again, vibrant, energized, and full of joy. I realized that true success wasn't about climbing the corporate ladder or accumulating wealth or impressing the world. It was about living a life that was authentic, meaningful, and aligned with my values. It was about taking care of my body, mind, and spirit. It was about finding joy in the simple things, connecting with loved ones, and making a difference in the world. One afternoon, several months into my transformation, I found myself back in the hospital cafeteria, sitting across from Dr. Sharma. This time, however, the atmosphere was different. The fluorescent lights still hummed, but the frantic symphony in my mind had been replaced by a quiet melody of peace. Anya smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners, Well, Clara, she said, pushing a new stack of papers across the table. These are the best test results I've seen in years. Your inflammatory markers are down, your blood pressure is normal, and, well, you look amazing. I laughed, a genuine, heartfelt laugh that reached all the way down to my toes. Thank you, Anya, I said. I feel amazing. I looked out the window at the bustling city below. It was still a city of ambition and opportunity, but it no longer held the same power over me. I had broken free from the cage of expectations and found my own path, a path that led to health, happiness, and inner peace. I was no longer living to impress. I was living to breathe. And in that breath, I found true freedom. My journey continued, of course. There were still challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But I was equipped now, armed with the tools and the wisdom to navigate them. I had learned the importance of self-care, the power of mindfulness, and the transformative effects of self-acceptance. I started sharing my story with others, hoping to inspire them to break free from their own cages of expectations and embrace a life of authenticity and well-being. I started a blog where I wrote about my experiences, shared my insights, and offered practical advice on stress management, mindfulness, and self-care. I became an advocate for workplace wellness, speaking at conferences and workshops, urging companies to prioritize the health and well-being of their employees. I volunteered at a local community center, teaching mindfulness and meditation to people struggling with stress and anxiety. I realized that my purpose in life wasn't to climb the corporate ladder or accumulate wealth or impress the world. It was to help others heal, to empower them to live their best lives, and to create a world where everyone had the opportunity to thrive. One day, I received an email from a young woman who had read my blog. She wrote about her own struggles with stress and anxiety, her relentless pursuit of perfection, and her growing sense of emptiness. She thanked me for sharing my story, for giving her hope, and for inspiring her to make a change. Her email brought tears to my eyes. I realized that my journey had come full circle. I had started by healing myself, and now I was helping others heal as well. It was a profound and deeply fulfilling experience. I continued to live my life with intention, prioritizing my health, my happiness, and my inner peace. I practiced mindfulness, meditated regularly, and spent time in nature. I surrounded myself with people who loved and supported me. I pursued my passions and made a difference in the world. And I continued to breathe, deeply, fully, and gratefully. For I had learned that the greatest success in life wasn't about what I achieved, but about who I became. It was about living a life of purpose, passion, and peace. It was about living to breathe. The years passed and I continued to grow and evolve. I faced new challenges, experienced new joys, and learned new lessons. But one thing remained constant, my commitment to living a life of health, happiness, and inner peace. I retired from my corporate career, feeling a sense of accomplishment and gratitude for the opportunities I had been given. I continued to blog, to speak, and to volunteer, sharing my wisdom and inspiring others to live their best lives. I traveled the world, exploring new cultures, meeting new people, and immersing myself in the beauty and wonder of the natural world. I spent time with my family and friends, cherishing the bonds of love and connection that sustained me. I grew old, gracefully and gratefully. My body aged, but my spirit remained young and vibrant. I embraced the wisdom of age, the perspective of experience, and the joy of living each day to the fullest. And as I approached the end of my life, I looked back with a sense of peace and contentment. I had lived a good life, a meaningful life, a life that was true to myself. I had overcome challenges, learned from my mistakes, and made a difference in the world. I had lived to breathe. And in that breath, I had found true freedom. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the horizon, I sat on my porch, surrounded by my loved ones. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and smiled. And then I let go. And in that final breath, I found eternal peace. Thank you, truly, for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, even just a little, then I hope it reminded you of one thing: you matter. Not for what you achieve or how much you do, but simply because you are here. If you've ever felt like you're running on fumes, chasing expectations that don't feel like your own, please know, it's okay to pause, to say no, to breathe, and maybe, just maybe, to choose a life that feels lighter. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, or share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're ready to take your first small step toward healing, leave a comment below. I love to hear your story. Until next time, take care of yourself. And never forget, you're allowed to breathe.